Hello and welcome to the FMG Podcast, episode 5. After a long hiatus, this is our Game of Thrones special. So if you're not into Game of Thrones, may not be the one for you. We're going to talk a lot about it. I'm your host, Carl. With me, as always, are the other FMG members. I've got Adam.
G'day.
Andy.
G'day.
And Troy is a new member. Well, he technically is a member of FMG, but this is his first time on the podcast. So give us a hi, Troy.
It's a pleasure.
Now, it's kind of good that we're talking about Game of Thrones now. It has been a little over a month, but there will be no giving out spoilers because...
Well, I don't know, Carl. I'm sure there's a few people in our audience who, when Season 8 started, they thought, I better get started on Season 1. Maybe they haven't caught up yet. Got to keep them in mind.
You know what? A guy at work was like, we were talking about the final episode, and he's like, I haven't watched it yet, but I want to hear what you have to say because I like knowing everything before I watch a show.
I mean, I don't think it's silly. I can understand it. I don't think there are many people who are like that, but I can definitely understand it.
Carl, that sounds like someone who listens to reviews. Yeah, that just sounds like someone who looks for reviews to work out if something's good or not.
Yeah, I guess it's just the total opposite of me.
Haven't we had a huge discussion about spoilers and stuff already?
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Episode 5, we're already repeating ourselves. The old man.
Yeah.
I think we should just state it. This is your moment to turn off the podcast and marathon Game of Thrones so you can come back and finish the podcast, all right? This is your chance.
When you finish in 3 years, you can unpause the podcast.
Take it from there. So I think Adam had a lot to say. So Adam, do you want to kick us off? Like what to start off with?
Do I have the most? I feel like I'm always the one who's like, oh,
all right, Andy seems pretty opinionated on this. So Andy, do you want to start us off with your initial thoughts after all these memes, after all these petitions and everything like that? Sum up your thoughts and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, like I'd go and describe Game of Thrones like a wonderful roller coaster that, had some really high peaks, but those lows were pretty low. And look, you've gone through the twists and turns of the story, and it's just turned into a bit of a work in progress at the end, and just a bit of a letdown, I think, in terms of an ending. But overall, still, it's one of the best things on television. If you didn't listen to my hints of going to watch it before now, just go watch it. It's fantastic.
Everyone's seen it.
Season 8 out of 10, Andy. I'll get a score from everyone.
Oh, season 8 out of 10. I'd give it look, as an ending. And look, I feel like a lot of shows, you need you can build up a show to be fantastic, but you got to you got to finish it. You got to land that finish, and they didn't. So I'm going to give it about a 5, 6 out of 10. Yeah, not too happy with it. Nah, didn't feel very... It didn't feel like it fit in with the rest of the series. It felt very TV-ish in that it pulled out the plot armor when they wanted to keep certain characters alive, when previously Game of Thrones, they would have just been slaughtered. And it kind of ended on this half note. It was just like, I was just constantly thinking, you could have done that better. Why aren't they smiling? Why is Arya going to the west? Why is the north its own independent kingdom? What's going... all these little things just stacked up, and I was just in there going, okay, well, I think I'm the only one who's actually read the books here, so...
We'll put it on pause. Troy, out of 10, what do you think?
I actually think that Andy was generous there.
Whoa!
I'm going to give it a 3.5. I honestly think that the show on a whole was fantastic. And that last season really let it down in so many facets. I think the writing was really poor. A lot of things just really didn't add up for me. I think they could have done a lot better. I think it really kind of let themselves down. Whether the writers and the cast choose to accept that or not.
Wow. Well, I give it overall season 8. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I'm complete opposite to you guys. I think there's only one major issue for me. Other than that, I think it's probably one of the best seasons produced for television. That's what I think. So I'm really disappointed hearing your results.
disappointed in you, Carl. What's going on?
Adam, what do you think?
My opinion is probably more or less in line with Andy's. I would give it about a 5. And keep in mind that, I think you guys would agree I have a bit of a reputation as being harsh but fair when it comes to giving out ratings.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with about a 5.
Andy, you just raised 2 points there. Like, the North has always been, or for a long time in the history of Westeros, like, the North was an independent kingdom. And majority of the reason why is because Sansa always wanted the throne. Like, since season 1, that's all she ever wanted. She didn't want to give it up to anyone.
She did not. She
There are
wanted
so
to
many
get married
quotes.
off to bloody Joffrey.
Yeah, to be the queen. She said, like, literally in season 1, there's 2 lines where she literally said, I want to be a queen. That's what I always wanted. Like, she's always wanted that.
Okay. But then, but in the setting that this comes, and look, oh man, it's like you're opening up a can of worms here, Carl. Like, I feel like let's leave this for a bit later, getting into the real nitty gritty.
I want to attack this on a more focused point by point level.
Yeah. Well, like, I want to hear Troy. Troy, why have you given it such a what are some things that brought it really down to a 3.5 for you? Like, that's
so. If we kind of break up the season into 2 sections, the first being the battle against the dead, and the second part being battle against Cersei. I think a huge issue with the series is where they left Winterfell, and I don't think it made any sense. I don't think anything was really explained as far as the White Walkers and that whole story arc, beyond a couple of very like general reasons why they were coming down to mess everybody up.
Yeah, there was those couple of those small flashbacks. I know what you're talking about. It was very minimal. It was like just quickly how they were made, and that was about it, not really why.
And beyond how they were made, like, why were they coming down? What was the reasoning? Why were they seemingly invincible except for one tiny opening in the armor, and that was just game over? And there was never they never returned to it. Throughout the whole season, I was hoping for something to return to it and be like, oh, by the way, that happened because of this. And there was just nothing. It was very, very clean cut. I just kind of did a bit of the stabby, and then that was it. So
as she does.
That was as you do, but I think it was very clean. And then they moved on to Cersei. That was all, relatively clean. And the plot armor, so many characters were protected. And I don't think enough of the storyline was really thought out. And as far as characters kind of fulfilling their potential very, very neatly, which didn't seem like it kind of flowed with the general Game of Thrones kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say there was still shocks, like when Jaime just left Brienne and went for Cersei? I was a bit shocked by that. Wouldn't you say there was still shocks there?
Yeah.
There was, but is that really a huge shock in kind of the realm of Game of Thrones? Like, it was a very rushed kind of romance, and although
it started since season 3.
Yeah, but it felt more like fan service the way they finally let it happen. Yeah,
I don't know. I think that it's not entirely unreasonable the way that it happened. It was built up over the course, and probably the fact, if you think it came across as a little bit fan servicey at the end, probably just comes down to the amount of time that they had or didn't have, which is probably something that's going to come up a lot in this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you consider that a shock, though, I won't get into whether I do or not. I think that there were a lot of things in this last season which were designed to be shocking and which just didn't have the intended effect. Like, if they were surprising, they were surprising in an unsatisfying way rather than in a satisfying way that you have in for example, the classic twists of, like, the Red Wedding, for example, where even though you don't expect it to happen, it's built up in a way that afterward you can look back and say, I can see exactly how everything, the dominoes fell, and this was really the only way it could have happened. But in your mind going in, you have these expectations from the genre and so on that are subverted in this really expert way. But in the end, in the last season, there were a lot of things where it's just like, okay, and then this happens because, oh, you didn't see that coming. Yeah, well, sure, I didn't see it coming, but should I? You know.
Yeah, you're just getting blindsided then, rather than having that finish of, you know, seeing these duplicitous characters. Like, you know, okay, to be honest, Red Wedding is the highlight of Game of Thrones, I think, as a bit of TV drama, as a character play that Game of Thrones is. Having the single episode where half of the good moral characters get knocked off by the more evil, politically minded, conniving character, like just the way they got slaughtered.
It was just Rob and Catelyn, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was the whole Starks. It was literally all the Starks that were just building up to they're avenging their father Eddard after he was beheaded by the Lannisters, and it's just like, yep, they've been building up for it. They finally got over the phrase, and this little political misstep with him sleeping with. Oh, they changed the name. Yeah, they changed the name for the TV series. But yeah, there's that misstep, and just being like, okay, things are going to go back on track. They're going to go back to winning. This is going to be okay. But then you've got the betrayal that just like wipes them all out, and then suddenly all those characters, especially some of the Lannisters, Tywin Lannister in particular, suddenly comes up as a lot more powerful and a lot more dangerous, just because he's been like, yep, I'm getting the war. This is how we're going to do it. And it literally is just like that rising momentum towards the Starks is just gone. That whole idea of the war arc is gone. The war is over. They've just slaughtered all the Starks. It's just like, as a powerful moment for any kind of story, for Game of Thrones to have built up around that. It's just fantastic. And yeah, I'd agree. It's like they were trying to do the same thing in season 7 and 8 by having these big moments that were supposed to be shocking, like going back to previous season, at least season 7, with Littlefinger getting knocked off. I saw that coming a mile away, and it just felt so forced rather than an organic, real nice twist that would come into it.
And anyone thinking that, like, you know, there were no big twists, like, they're lying. Like, if you actually thought that Bran was going to be the king at the end, like, I think you're full of shit. But
yeah, but I don't care. It's fucking Bran. Like, as soon as I said it's Bran, you're like, what?
I also think a lot of people romanticize season 1 and 2 as being like this amazing thing. Where I've gone back and watched season. I'm up to season 3 now, and you talking about the Red Wedding being this big payoff and stuff, but you're also, a lot of people are forgetting that whole romance between Rob and the nurse on the battlefield, that was terrible. Those scenes are terrible. You talk about like Tyrion like moving some chairs, and it's just like, this is wasting my Game of Thrones. Like there are some really bad, boring ass plot lines in season 1 and 2 that I think everyone just forgets about.
Yeah, but no one's saying that it's perfect, but I think, at least from a narrative perspective, it's overall very, very much in the positive. There are some missteps here and there, like, okay, yeah, the romance didn't feel that natural, and it was a bit kind of like forced. I don't even really like this person, and blah blah blah. But you know, that's a pretty minor detail, I think, when you look back and you look at something like the Red Wedding as a feat of storytelling. Like, I think it's really an expert example of the best way that you can subvert expectations in fiction. Like, yeah. It's in a sense one of these perfect examples of how to do a twist in a good way.
Yeah, Troy, what were you going to say?
I guess the issue with the twists is no one really cared. That's my kind of take on the last season's twists. Whether it's Arya or Jon Snow killing
the Night King,
you know, who cares? He died. There wasn't anything that changed that. Even with Jon killing Daenerys, there was no consequence. In the end of that, and I think that was a big part of it where it started to be super happy ending. Jon Snow seemingly walked off with into the north, and it was like happy days. Where's the pain in the end of it? Everyone was happy. As far as a twist being Bran becoming king, who cares? Like, I don't think there was much of a payoff or a consequence for any of these kind of little twists, which kind of is at a detriment.
Yeah, definitely. It's the payoff at the end that just felt so forced. And look, my biggest fault with season 8 is that they only made it 8 episodes. It could have been another season for sure.
It was 6 episodes.
6 episodes. It was
6. Fuck, even less. Oh yeah. They said they were like a little longer, but they needed the extra time. They needed the 10 episodes to flesh everything out. You know, it's just.
I think that's definitely my core observation as well, Andy. I think if you boil the entire season down into plot points, there aren't that many which are in principle bad. Like you could say, okay, yeah, that could be interesting. That could be really well done. Blah blah blah. If you had 2 seasons of 10 episodes, you could do it justice. But 1 season of 6 episodes, no way. It was a mess. It was just a complete mess, and there was no other way.
I don't have a problem with the length. I think if they went for another season, I would have thought this is dragging out way too long, because there are a lot of. That's what I think. I think, potentially 8 episodes, maybe 10 episodes at a stretch, but not 2 seasons. I think there was enough content there that I'm struggling to understand. Like, the last couple of seasons, like, it has been good. There's none of that filler crap. Like, I thought it was sufficient length. Like, some of those episodes were feature-length movies.
This is where I think we're going to have a fundamental disagreement. Because I get the impression that you're one of these people who looks back on the earlier seasons and are like, they're good, but they're really slow, and there's a lot of stuff which doesn't matter, and it's not important. But that's important. It's like the gaps are crucial, I think. And maybe it's not to everyone's taste, but if you cut that out, it's like you're cutting out the skeleton. And all that you're left with is like a mush of story, which is.
So I think I look back on season 1 and 2. I think they're not too slow. I think they're great, and I think all that is necessary, Adam, but not at the end. I don't need any more character development. I've been with these characters for long enough. I understand them. I understand what they're going through. I don't need that anymore. For the first 6 seasons,
but that's
I
the
did.
Whole thing. Like, for example, the perfect example in counter to that is Jamie. Like, he has had a very natural progression from season 1 through up until season 8.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it's all undone.
Yeah.
And
not
he just
even
reverts back.
not even undone.
So you can say that, I don't know, I don't need more character development. I know who these people are. But that's the whole thing. At the end, there is no more development. They just change on.
But Jamie's always been like that. That's always been him. That's what made it so great.
Look, can I interject here?
Yeah.
Because I would agree with Carl that once this season ended, I was thinking, okay, if they had a tight budget, what could they have cut out to make that last season better? I think there is definitely some things that could be taken out of Game of Thrones. And for me, personally, it's Theon getting tortured for 2 seasons or something. I don't think I need that. I think that could have been skipped over or insinuated in a better way than having him repeatedly tortured again and again, just to make the Boltons look worse and worse. I think it's just missteps at the end. But in the same way, Adam's right in that the whole show is all these characters reacting against all these forces and actions of other bigger players running around. I mean, the whole show starts off, really starts getting going when Eddard works out that the kids aren't there. Well, the Cersei and oh no, shit!
Come on, Andy, you're terrible with names.
Shut up, dude. Shut up. We're just talking about him too.
Do you mean Jamie? Do you mean Robert?
No.
Do you mean Cersei?
The Robert's children were not, in fact, his children.
Okay,
fact,
Andy, what I want
Cersei
you to do
sleeping
is
with
go
her
on
brother.
Google And
Shut
you
up.
go on
I actually have
Google,
it open. Shut up.
get all the characters up.
I had
and
it
then
open and I've been practicing for like 10 minutes, all right? It happens. There's literally a Wikipedia
He's an
page
old
that has,
man,
like,
Carl. Let
50
him
names.
be.
It's ridiculous.
Let him ramble.
But Adam, if you think about any kind of, whether it be a novel, a movie, any kind of TV series, you know, it builds up to a point. You don't have in the epic climax points, you don't have long periods of, you know, character development. That's not how like narrative usually
No, I mean,
is structured.
I'm not. No, in the end, you don't. My point is not that you need more character development at the end. My point is that at the end, you need payoff to character development. And that's
Why
what
would
the
length
last season
do that?
didn't have. What?
Why would length
Gives
mean
you time.
payoff?
It gives you time. That's what you need. Like, it
And
allows
that's
you
not
to flesh
just
out, say, a battle or a conflict to mean much more than it does for a character than just, all right, two sides fight and one's dead. They already did that in Game of Thrones with some battles. They just cut out entirely, going, you don't really need to know what happens in the battle, just that Jaime gets captured and now he's a prisoner. And now that the Starks have the upper hand when it came to the early battles between the War of Five Kings. I mean, if we're going to go back to Lord of the Rings, I'm thinking of Gandalf
Oh,
and
no.
Pippin. I'm thinking
Not
of
Lord of
Gandalf
the
and
Rings
Pippin
comparisons.
defending Minas Tirith, and Pippin's going, well, what's it like to die? And Gandalf gives him this rousing speech that's just like, oh, this is what it's like. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it builds Pippin up to be like, Pippin literally goes,
Can't
well,
remember,
hang on.
Andy.
Hey, you guys can correct me if you want. Come bring the
I
quote
do.
out. Just tuck
I
it in
do.
here. But I'm saying that Pippin suddenly goes, hey, dying isn't that bad. He gets over his fear. And suddenly he's just like, all right, well, we've got to go into the fight. If I die, I die, but we're just going for it.
Yeah, there were dialogue sequences of character development way longer than that, Andy. And you're talking about like, you know, in this final battle scene, I'm getting the vibe, like, tell me if I'm wrong here, that you guys, like, you had this emotional scene between Jaime and Brienne, and like, you know, he says like, you know, this is who I am kind of thing. And it's like a really good emotional scene. It's like, what more do you want? Like, do you want people just like that's enough for
What
a
I
climax of a
No,
TV show.
it's not enough because he does that. Then they survive the battle at Winterfell, and then they bang, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, but I love Cersei," and then he just
No, that's
that
not
is
the order
literally
it
what
went
it.
in.
Carl, that is what happens. It is a travesty to his character and the characters of Game of Thrones. So how
What are you talking about? I'm talking about their emotional scene before he rides off.
No,
It's
listen.
right.
As a scene, Carl, it's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine scene if you ignore literally everything that has happened in the 7 seasons preceding it.
No, I totally disagree. Jaime has always loved Cersei. He's always had that in the background. I think that is one of the most realist moments of this season, where it's just like, no, I'm not going to give you the happy ending where you change and become a good character. You've been a scumbag for most of your life, and you are still that, like, you still love your sister, and you have a kid with your sister. Like, it makes so much sense.
I would actually agree with Carl there. I think Jaime's character development does make a lot of sense. I think as much as he tried to do the right thing, he was always a bit of a bastard.
Thank you.
And as much as everyone wanted him to do the right thing, even up until the last moments, that's what he was going to go back to.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I could take that as a tragic character. Jaime works really well. I just think that he could have used a bit more explanation or a bit more time to come to that, rather than just.
You're trying to have it both ways here, Carl. You're trying to have it both ways because you can't say on the one hand he's always been in love with Cersei, so he's always going to go back, and then also say, well, yeah, of course he's changed over the course of those 7 months, blah 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 blah. But it doesn't matter at the end.
Well, I think
like,
human
either
beings.
He's changing.
Because he's changing in some respects. So that he's like all characters.
These changes they controvert one another.
No, they don't.
It's fundamental to his character.
His loyalty to like redeeming himself as the Kingslayer is totally different to his love life with his sister. They're two completely different elements of his character. They don't.
Unless you'd think that his sister literally like burnt. Oh, it,
You're also
it's for
overlooking the whole
Jamie.
relationship with Tyrion that goes back to their childhood and all that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, they're all separate
Circumstances.
things.
Like another thing, for example, when he's a prisoner and Tyrion's trying to free him at the end, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I never cared about all the common people. Fuck them, they're all pieces of shit." That just goes against his entire backstory of being the Kingslayer and being like, "Well, yeah, maybe we shouldn't genocide the entire city with wildfire. You know, just maybe it's worth it to stab this guy in the back." Like he earns himself the ire of being an oathbreaker amongst the entire known world for the sake of saving the city.
Okay, well, let's move on from Jamie. That you've made some good points, Adam, and I encourage everyone in the comments to also write down, like, tell us we're completely wrong, right? All your different theories on where we're going with any of these topics. But let's move on from Jamie and Brienne, and we've talked about the show length. I want to talk about some positive things that I thought, and because you guys have talked about some negative things. I think the battle against the the Night King, sorry. I think that was one of the most intense battles in like any form of. I know, like Adam, there is more to it than just battles, but in terms of the stakes and the way that was directed and everything like that. I don't see how that is a pinnacle of the whole series is not like worth at least bringing their score up more. Like,
well, I mean that episode also has its failings. Not if we put aside the narrative stuff, there's a lot of scenes. Okay, first of all, it was really fucking dark. But
yeah, but that's
dark.
no. That's but it was dark, but a lot of it came down to people's download copies. Like,
but even
I watched it on Foxtel, and it was really, really damn dark.
It's really dark, Carl. Like I feel like it's the CGI guys just being like, please, we can't make it look any better. Just make it darker. I can understand the cinematographer was like, yeah, nah, let's make it really dark, and it really fits really well with the setting and the tone of that episode. Like it is the Helm's Deep.
Initially, when it's pitch black and you can't see anything, it's like, oh fuck, this is really spooky. But then it's like after a while, your eyes start to hurt, and it's like it's kind of taken me out of the experience here a little bit, guys.
Let's wait for the uncompressed Blu-ray.
It's certainly made it very hard to follow the action, and look, there was a lot of really great stuff in there, but I just felt like
hang on,
the
I'm
darkness...
not done being negative here, Andy.
no, just all right, you go.
The other thing that really shit me is that I had no idea who was dead at any point, because there are so many times when you have characters who are cut off, being covered in like ice zombies that they're trying to I can't and it's like, oh fuck, that person's dead, that other person's dead, fuck, they're all dead, this is really tragic, this is really sad. And then it's like the next scene they're still fighting, and oh, I guess they got okay, sure, and then at the end they were all alive. So it's like, well, fuck you,
all alive
with my emotions,
all alive. Jorah didn't make it.
Oh, fuck Jorah.
What is it, Sir Friendzone, as some people call him.
Beric didn't make it.
Beric,
sure,
what was it? Dave, I think one of the Night Watchmen didn't make it.
Yeah.
There were like 3 people died.
There were 5 people.
And no one cared about any of them.
Yeah.
But all of the main characters, to me, it was a little bit annoying that they always seemed to be being overrun, and whereas other people were being killed for it, they had the plot armor. Which don't do that.
For me, that took away from the episode big time. As far as it was quite suspenseful until about, I don't know, halfway, 3/4 way through, where it seemed like you knew exactly who was going to die, and if they were important enough, they were going to make it. Regardless of, I think several times there was characters literally being clawed, overrun, like had no space, and then cut next scene, they're fine.
There's a couple I'm used to a lot of franchises, like pretty much every franchise doing the same thing, like where, like, you know, you look at Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, everything, there'll be these huge battles that for some reason the make like this isn't an unusual thing. And also I think that there is a misunderstanding with how it was edited. Like, people keep talking about, hey, we're just up against a wall fighting for like half an hour, but I think people are not figuring out that scene of them up against the wall, that only went for, say, like a couple of minutes, but they just keep cutting it back to it because it's like the last couple of minutes shown from everyone's perspective. It's like that kind of phenomenon that you get in editing. So it's not actually them up there for half an hour by themselves.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I can understand that. And like, there's somebody who's gone and made some supercuts of that battle where they've just stitched those scenes together, and it's like every time it's like things looking worse, the music's getting higher in pitch, the tension is building as it looks like, oh, they're going to get overrun, and just before you might get that moment of, oh yeah, that's it, like they're just going to get swarmed, it cuts away, and then you'll show another bit of the battle of like Jono running around trying to get through Winterfell to confront the Night King, and then it'll cut back to everybody, like Sam's literally on the ground just stabbing away, just going, ah! Everyone's back to the wall, just cutting their way through, just screaming. Like, Brienne had quite a few little kind of like fake outs with dying, getting like completely swarmed over. Look, that is definitely my biggest problem with that episode, is that the previous one set such a great tone of, oh, we've all made it here, we're all here to fight under Winterfell. Isn't this fucking strange? Like that beautiful moment where they're all in front of the fire with Tyrion and Davos and everybody, and it's just sitting there just going, oh, we're probably going to get fucked up tomorrow. Like, they built it up as, this is do or die, and it's one thing I think that it's do or die.
I can understand that.
And you know the problem, like, if they all start on the front fucking line, like that beautiful shot of Grey Worm seeing this tide of the undead come and like hit the front lines and just start slaughtering everybody, you're just like, fuck, like, I got goosebumps. I actually kind of like stepped back and just went, shit, like that is a fucking beautiful visual representation and like a scene. Like, that's just fantastic. But all the major characters in the front line, so you can get that.
They weren't all in the front line. They were in the castle.
Along. And then they all just like, they all made it back out, and you're like, fuck off, come on. It's like the only reason why they survived is because the script writers went, oh yeah, but we wrote extra scenes for these people, so they have to survive. Everybody else they just die. Like, they just want to die, and that's the reason why our guys survived. They didn't want to die. That's how it works.
Most of the cast were in Winterfell, Andy. They weren't on the front line.
They were not. No.
They were.
There is a track shot after the Dothraki, like before they go out. They have a track shot going across the whole front line, and it's everybody's in the front. There are a couple off the back, like Sansa and Tyrion, but everybody that's important, that's a fighter, is up the front. It's shit.
Can I talk quickly about who died and how frustrating this was? Besides the fact that the major characters had thick plot armor, but even the characters that did die, they were able to fulfill all of their purposes. There was no deaths as far as it being truly tragic because they just got messed up. Let's start with Melisandre. Pretty easy. She did some wicked fire shit and then just walked off and died because, you know, she literally, my work here was done. And then just like, all right, I'm out. See you later.
But you didn't do anything, did I?
No, she did do something.
It's kind of true, though. She didn't really do too much.
What are you talking about? If it wasn't for her, they would have been screwed with the pit.
Oh, yeah. She made all the Dothraki swords go alight so they could charge like wantonly straight into the undead, all die. So you get a beautiful vision of just how fucked everybody is as the little lights go out. You know, looks cool, but when you start using your noggin, it's like...
Next up was Theon also died at the end there, where he just decided to run head-on at the Night King. That was pretty obvious as well, because I think he had a little moment with Bran. Again, after betraying everyone, he kind of came full circle and had a really honorable death. Beric Dondarrion, after dying a ton of times and coming back, he obviously saved Aya, so she could do her little bit. There was that dude from the Night's Watch. Who really cares?
His name was Dave.
Dave-O. I'll just pass on him. A big one for me was Jorah. I thought that was so tacky. That of course the way he dies is saving the woman that he loves, Daenerys. Like, I don't think there could have been any cleaner, crisper way that he could have carked it. And I think the only other one was Lyanna Mormont getting getting her comeuppance, and even then, like, that was a bit tragic, but she was a bit of a badass that I think dying in battle that way is also kind of full circle as far as her
she killed a zombie giant, which is still pretty fucking kick-ass.
It was pretty damn badass,
Yeah.
Like when she got hit and you just heard that little squeal of her just flying, just going, ah! And she just got whacked to the club. You're like, I was like, holy shit, okay. Like everyone's like, oh, no, she's a strong little girl. She could do it. And then it's like, oh, wow. Like she literally just got swatted away like a fly. Like she made a wonderful, like, she did a very heroic ending. Like that is the stuff of Tales, that's for sure. But
yeah, I have one more thing, which is that there's a lot that can be said in terms of like the structure of the battle. And if you care about that kind of thing, there's a lot you can nitpick. Like throwing in the cavalry and then they do nothing but die is like, okay, that's pretty stupid. Putting all the catapults at the front so they can fire once and then be overrun, also pretty stupid and pointless. And okay, yeah, that's not ideal. And it's fine if you want that to be done better. But, and now that I've finished with my negatives, I can come around and ultimately agree with you, Carl, that actually when I watched this episode, I was really impressed with it overall. Like, I was talking to a friend, and I think I said to my friend, depending on how the stuff with the Night King, if it ends up coming back or not, because I felt like the ending was a little bit unsatisfying, but somewhere between 8 and 10 out of 10, basically, because I just felt like I was engrossed, I was sucked in, the whole time for that whole period of over an hour, I was just on the edge of my seat. Emotionally, I was invested. It was really thrilling. The direction was fantastic. The performances were fantastic. The effects were very good. It's still a little bit too dark, but the effects were very good. I thought as a battle scene, it was, definitely amongst the best that I've seen in fiction. 100%.
Hey, Troy, what did you think of? Thanks for sharing that, but I was gonna say
but you're wrong. Wrong. It was 10 out of 10, Adam. You got it wrong.
The one time I'm gonna agree with Carl this whole time, and he fucking blows me off.
Well, hey, Adam. Just before Carl cuts me off, I'll also agree with you. Still stellar episode. Loved it. I think it's sitting the entire way through, and right at the end, right when it finished, I just went, "Whoa!" That just happened. Anyway, Carl,
I wanted to like say something, but I was like, crap, I better acknowledge what Adam said. It came out wrong. Sorry. Okay.
Sure, Carl. Yeah, it's all right.
What did you think of Daenerys turning Troy? Because that was, for a lot of people, really out of there and unexpected and shocking.
I was not as offended at her turning in the end as a lot of other people were. I think a lot of people thought it came out of the blue. I don't think it came out of the blue, but I think they really cocked up her character development as far as rushing everything so quickly. I could see how she could turn. Obviously she was betrayed by Varys. Then her best friend gets killed. All these kind of things happen, but they all happened in, I think it was like 1 or 2 episodes. And I think I could see all these things happening, which just slowly tips her over the edge. I mean, she was no saint, and I think a lot of people kind of put her in a really good light as far as freeing the slaves and all that kind of thing. But she did some pretty messed up shit.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I'm watching season 1, and you got like Khal Drogo saying, "I will rape all the women for you, Khaleesi," and she's just like, "Yeah, my love, my star," kind of thing. I was just like, "Wait, hang on, come on!" Like,
she always had it in her. I think it was just the fact that it all happened in 1 or 2 episodes, and that's more of a
100%.
the whole season. If it was probably stretched out to maybe 10 episodes, and they kind of drew that out a bit more, I don't think many people would have an issue with it. But
and
it
like
was
my son, she has a son, and she's like, the son that will mount the world.
I mean, maybe 2 seasons would be too much. I don't think it necessarily would be if you had the books to go off, because probably there'd be a lot more detail, a lot more intricacy, a lot more richness in terms of what's going on. But just in terms of fulfilling those plot points in a satisfying way, it all comes back to time. Like, you can do so much, for example, with Daenerys. If you wanted to make like a criticism of, like, I don't know, Western white imperialism through metaphor of Daenerys, that's like the perfect example, right? Because you have this whole savior complex, which was a kind of unpleasant undertone in a lot of what's happened so far when she's been out in Essos, and that kind of, depending on how you frame her, and the show initially frames her as being very positive, but of course there's a whole lot of stuff with all of the masters getting crucified, and like, oh shit, that's pretty grim. The capacity is always there. Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I'll tell you something a little bit funny, which is why when I was watching the final episode, I accidentally had it in my VLC settings to have all the subtitles turned off.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize this, so I thought it was just like a stylistic choice of the people who made it. But that scene when she's addressing the army,
oh yeah,
I couldn't understand a word she was saying. But you have this thing where it's like, from Arya's perspective, if she's walking like alongside the army, there's this foreign language that she can't understand, that Jon can't understand, and she's addressing this huge army. They're cheering, and it's like, fuck, this is really terrifying. Like, this is what an imperial invasion would be like,
Yeah, the shot's like straight out of Triumph of the Will, dictator on the top of like a podium,
But I mean, like, even I saw it later on with the subtitles. And I was like, oh, I felt a little bit stupid, but also I felt a little bit like it works better without them.
Yeah,
because it's really shot from the perspective of people who wouldn't be able to understand that language.
True.
But
I think
But yeah, at the end, definitely her turn. I mean, it was also not really clear, I think, like, a lot of people were on first watching, myself included, probably got the impression that it was the bells that kind of set her off. And I read a lot and saw a lot of people who were saying actually it was more like her finally seeing the Red Keep where she was born and where his family's from, where they ruled over, and it's like her whole life's culminating in this thing. She's just laser focused on it. That's kind of what set her off. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because people don't go crazy in an instant. Even Targaryens.
Yeah.
And
no, I think she was very calculated.
What Troy said, where it's like, it's just it can be made to make sense, but they didn't. There just wasn't enough time to lay the foundation sufficiently, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it was very bare bones, but I think, like, for me, that they going by the foundations allegory, they're late enough for me where, Varys has been trying to poison her. She's kind of given up. She's executed him. She goes up to Jono being like, look, you have a stake, you have a claim to the throne. I don't know if I could trust you. She tries to put on that air of friendliness they used to, and he's just like, look, you'll always be my queen, but I'm not going to sleep with you, And she's just like, all right, well, I'm just going to rule by fear. And then leading up to that episode with the whole battle, I was thinking, look, she has a choice here. She's had enough people, enough of her aides and everything, being like, look, you don't want to be Queen of the Ashes. You want to be a better ruler than your father was. you know, they had all these people just vouching for her. And that was me as well coming the episode. Was like, is she going to burn it? We don't know. And at that moment, you know, when she kind of looks around the entire city, and they've kind of built it up a little with the previous episode after the Battle of Winterfell, everybody's celebrating, but she is still a separate entity. She's not really home here. She doesn't have that loyalty that she did over in Essos. And it's just like, all right, well, how is she gonna retain power? How is she gonna, for the whole series, she's been leading up to this point of becoming Queen of Westeros, to retaking the throne. And right at the last second, Jono comes up and goes, oh, I'm actually the proper heir. And it's just like, well, if Jono is going to be a bit of a wuss and not take it himself, but other people will always look at Jon and be like, he should be the actual heir, he should be king. Then all she's got left is fear. And sadly, that's how it went, where she just kind of like goes, right, cool, I'm just going to burn everything like I won.
Well, she's done that before. She's used fear. I always thought she just wanted to start completely fresh. Like, she didn't want to rule these people. These aren't the people she wanted to save and rule. She wants to just save and rule her people from the Unsullied and the Dothraki. Like, she wants to just completely start fresh with none of these people existing, being King's Landing population.
It definitely seems like her idea of breaking the wheel is basically just, okay, we're breaking the wheel by me being in charge forever.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yeah. Problem solved. Oh, I love that.
I wanted to talk about what dropped me down to an 8.
From your perfect 10.
From my perfect score.
Yeah.
All right,
it's not a perfect score. There is one thing.
Why do you rate it so high, Carl?
Well, I've mentioned why, but what I did, my one thing that is really giving me the shits is, as much as I try and like kind of comprehend, okay, so Bran's going to be the best king apparently because he understands all type and everything, and he can see all this stuff. I'm watching Game of Thrones again now, and just knowing that all this stuff to do with Bran becoming, all these scenes to do with him becoming the three-eyed raven, really just mean nothing. Like, they don't really eventuate in anything. Like, it's really just a waste of fucking time. Like, unless I try and convince myself that he's going to be the best king because of it, well, I can't really.
What I find really actually like another one of these missed opportunities in the way that they've done this ending, because I watched a lot of takes, a lot of hot takes after season 8 came out, and most of them were garbage and some of them were okay, but one of them which was really interesting was like, okay, so Bran is king now, but how much of Bran is Bran and how much of Bran is the three-eyed raven?
True.
As
I didn't even think of
essence, this essence in terms of the weirwood trees and the children of the forest, that whole thing going back thousands of years, like has the three-eyed raven as this kind of entity been planning this? Like, have they seen this event thousands of years in the past and kind of engineered? Did they want to be king? Is that a goal that they've had? Is this their revenge over the Andals coming and conquering and cutting down the, like, is it? And it's like, yeah.
That would have been great.
Okay.
That would have been great.
But that's kind of what happens. Like, he's played the Game of Thrones and he's won.
But that's the thing. It's like,
did he?
But I don't know.
That's the point. Did he?
Yeah.
We don't know. It's an interpretation, but it's definitely not clear. And I think it's one of these things where maybe you can make it into a headcanon, but the textual evidence is not really there, and it could be. And it's an interesting interpretation, and it's another one of these things. I think it ties back. It ties back into the Night King stuff as well. Like, basically, as far as the raw text seems concerned, Bran's significance is as the bait for the Night King. And once the Night King is taken care of, he's kind of like just a guy who can see all time, and he doesn't want to be king, so that makes him a good king. But it's like, that's pretty weak. That's pretty weak.
Yeah.
A lot of people died for that.
Well, I always thought that they made him king just to have somebody who's not controversial or anything, who's had a big prior history. It's just like, oh, it's just just Bran. He's just like a younger son of one of the Starks.
Yeah.
Not really a big controversial guy. It's just like, look, we just need someone to just like calm everything down after we've been slaughtering each other for a couple of years.
Also,
Bran seems all right.
There is that thing where it's like literally 2 episodes before, it's like, oh, well, I guess that means you're in charge of Winterfell. And it's like, no, I don't want to be in charge of Winterfell. And then at the end, it's like, hey, you want to be king? Well, why did I come all this way?
Yeah, and that's the thing. He says
Psych, I do.
Why do you think I came all this way? It's perfect, man. It's been a conspiracy from the beginning.
But it's
Bran's
like,
been in on
what?
What?
Why? I don't understand what you want.
Yeah. Some stupid thing that I keep hearing on those you mentioned about YouTube videos and other kind of analyses, whether it be articles. One that I keep seeing that annoys the shit out of me is people saying, oh, why did Jon have to go back to the north when he could have, as soon as the Unsullied left, he could have just stayed in Westeros? And I'm like, are you joking? Like, are you telling me in a show, like, it's never going to get back to the Unsullied, hey, Jon's just still chilling there? Like, they would have another war on their hands. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah, but they could have taken him on. They could have taken him on by then, Carl.
No, but they don't want more wars. That's like the whole purpose. Like, they don't want a war against the Unsullied and more bloodshed over just Jon. Like, I think it's a silly as thought.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pretty dumb shit out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
but he could have lived in hiding or something. Like, Westeros is a big place.
But
you can hide somewhere.
Who cares?
Why was Jon even allowed to live anyway?
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, as far as the Unsullied, like, their whole purpose was tied to Daenerys, and Jon's like, well, I kind of stabbed Daenerys, and they're like, all right, well, you've been naughty, so you're going in prison for a bit, and then we'll talk about it. Like, it's another thing that just doesn't make sense. And I think as far as the storyline and things like going down certain avenues, it would have been a lot more. I guess this is a missed twist. Jon kills Daenerys, and then just Jon gets killed for it. Because that was a big thing. They're all hanging out, and they're like, "You need to free Jon," and they're like, "No." And they're like, "All right, how about we just send him to the Knights?" Like, it's all a bit unbelievable.
To be honest, that last episode, my reaction at the end, a lot of people were really furious. They were like, "This is the worst thing ever. I hated it." Even when I was chatting with people over coffee the next day, they were like, "Oh, so terrible." I was like, look, I went in with no expectations because I've been watching the past few seasons. I've been watching this season. I know that if you're expecting a miracle, like this is going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen, then you're probably going to be disappointed. So I just went in, and at the end, I thought, after I watched the episode, my immediate reaction was basically, okay. So that's a bunch of stuff that happened. Because it was really like, oh, well, so Daenerys is giving the speech, and then Jon's in prison. Jon has this Tyrion, and then stabs her, and then Drogon takes her and flies away. And then, and then there's like the council meeting, and then like Bran is king, and it's like, okay, it's just this bunch of stuff that happens one after the other, and it's like, all right. Okay, I guess.
I'm a bit sad they did a time skip. They did a time skip, and then they almost ended with and everything goes back to normal, where Bran's the king, and Tyrion's back to being Hand of the king, and look, everything. It did
feel a little bit like Daenerys has to go back to her home planet.
Exactly. Like, what are we going to do with the body? All this extra dragon running around. Who's going to feed the dragon? I don't know. Fuck it. Then he just disappears.
Yeah, but if there's one thing that I really, really didn't like about season 8, and there's a lot of complaints you can make and that we have made, but it's one that really is core to my disappointment with it, and that is the treatment of the war against the Night King. And the reason is, I'm not saying that you can't. I mean, yes, there is an aspect of, okay, we've killed Satan, now we need to decide who's going to be in charge. It's such pointless bullshit by comparison. So having the stuff with Cersei afterwards, I felt was a little bit unsatisfying. I know people are going to disagree. But what's more important to me is that there's this existential threat, basically, to all life on Westeros. And it's like, okay, we need to band together and deal with this, or we're all fucked. And I felt like, okay, this is a pretty clear kind of analogy for climate change or whatever. And yeah, okay. So there's this big mission to convince Daenerys to join them, and everyone's banding together. And then Cersei's just like, no, fuck you guys. I'm not going to do that. And what are the consequences for her in the end? Literally nothing negative. Like, it's only positives for her. The army that she's fighting against has been basically decimated, which is the only thing that gives her a chance, like the slightest, slimmest chance of staying in power, is the fact that she decided not to help out against this existential threat. It's like, what's the message here? Like, what are we saying? Okay,
but maybe that's what they're actually saying.
Don't bother contributing to help against the end of the world. Just let other people deal with it, and then you'll be great. That's the kind of reasoning that has got us into the point where the fucking planet is melting to begin with. I don't need more shows that tell people, oh yeah, don't worry about it, other people will fix it. Because, fuck me, it's summer at the moment and it's too goddamn hot, and I do not want to live in a world which is this temperature all the time.
But maybe it's good that it's saying that, like, it's not sugarcoating it. Like, this is life. This is what people are going to do. And
that's the thing, Carl. In real life, the result isn't the bad guys are defeated, the climate is saved. The result is, no, we all fucking die.
No, like when you look at it...
If Cersei didn't contribute anything, and Winterfell was wiped out, and all of those characters basically died, and maybe 2 or 3 fled further south, I would be like, yeah, fair enough. I mean, devastating, awful, I hate it, but that's
how it works. That's how it works, Adam. Like, look at, like, in I'm just going to give you an example because you said about climate change and people not contributing. Like, you look at history. Like, that happens all the time in history. Like in World War II, you know, like you got all of Europe decimated by the Nazis, and you got a few countries like Republic of Ireland and Switzerland and everything, and they said, no, we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to let everyone else deal with it, and nothing really happened to them. Like, you know, of them remaining neutral. Like, that's just how the world works. Like, people pick up other people's slack.
I think it's still a good sign. Like, I feel like the climate change analogy is that's just one. You could, like Carl said, you could put it to any kind of big existential crisis where people have to come together. It's the idea that I like to think of it as the Game of Thrones that the show is named after. It's just like, is the political infighting that humanity is always struggling with, or the ruling class is always struggling with. And it's just like the Game of Thrones is the biggest danger because we can't come together to fight these threats that do represent, like, this is the end. Like, if we don't defeat the Night King, if we don't, using climate change, we don't find a way to work our way through climate change and control it or work on it. Yeah, but in the same sense, Game of Thrones, they still won in the end. They beat the Night King without Cersei's help, and then they just went, all right, we're just gonna nuke King's Landing, and then it'll be it. We don't have to worry about shit anymore. Like, that's what you get. So,
has George R.R. Martin said that the Night King and his army is a metaphor for climate change? Just out of curiosity.
No, I think it'd be any existential threat. He's definitely not put anything like that. But yeah, as you said, Carl, it could be anything.
Oh, he has, Adam.
Yeah.
Oh, he has explicitly said that.
I'm gonna look it up now.
Okay, yeah, I'm not doubting you. I wouldn't be surprised. But I think it would be a bit too convenient for Cersei to finally start thinking about someone other than herself and her kids.
No, yeah. Look, I'm not saying she has to contribute, but I'm saying that there need to be consequences for that.
Well, she died.
She dies.
She lost everything.
No, she doesn't die. No, shut the fuck up and listen to me. She does not die because she doesn't contribute to the war in the North.
Yes, she does.
She dies because she was at war with everyone else.
Yeah. Well, what's aren't they?
But she would have been an
irrespective of each other?
ally. Hang on. If she'd helped, she would have been an ally of everybody else, and they could have like talked
Yeah, but the
about
agreement
our
they
sharing
came
or something,
to, the agreement they came to was a temporary truce.
Yeah.
which could have been built into something.
And they did
I
actually do a truce. She didn't attack whilst they were like she said, "I'm not going to attack you for a little bit." Why? Like
Well,
I
no,
don't know.
she said, I'll let you all get killed by the Night King, and I will just chill in the castle. Um, I think her staying out of it made sense.
Yeah.
I don't think she was ever gonna go up there because the agreement that was made was a temporary truce, which is let's fight together, and then after this is all done, we're still gonna try and take it out. It didn't make any sense. Of course, she's gonna try and keep the better position in her mind.
Yeah.
But
If
then you
anything,
just
it
get
was
back.
better for Dany to relinquish the war against Cersei to come up and join with the Northerners against the Night King. Like that made a better story of, all right, here's people who have bigger stakes. The Cersei's just trying to hold on to everything, but Dany is in a better position to take the Iron Throne, but she still goes and helps defeat the Night King. Like there is that communal coming together to fight the bigger existential threat. Cersei is just the hard reality that some people will not help. They won't believe you, or they won't want to give up their position, and that's just a reality of it. If we're talking
Does
about climate change, we're
Yeah,
talking
but
about a lot of
again, we come back to my main point, which is that there need to be consequences for that. And Carl, you can make the analogy to other things, but World War II at the end of the day was not an existential threat, right? At the end of a war, someone wins and someone gets to live. But you let climate change get out of control, we all die.
yeah.
That's the difference. And that's what annoyed me. Like if you had it that okay, Cersei just like backstabs everyone, and then, as I said, the battle, the last stand at Winterfell fails. The White Walkers march south, basically wipe out all life on Westeros, and it's just this Shakespearean tragedy of as Andy said, the Game of Thrones is what caused everyone to die, and in the end, who sits on the Iron Throne didn't matter at all.
well, the Night King sits on it.
I mean,
Yeah.
everyone would have hated it. Everyone would have hated it.
No,
but
I
it
would have
would have
loved that. Would
been
have been cool.
Yeah, I would have preferred that.
That would have, for me, narratively, that would have been such a more satisfying thing where it's like, fuck, that is so depressing, but it means something at least. But instead, what we got was three episodes building up to this huge battle, which just okay, it ended, they won, and then back to your scheduled programming, fighting over the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any more final points before we get into our last question?
Well, what's the last question?
The last question was.
I have one.
I've got a couple.
If we look back over the entire season, the entire series, I just want to say that last season, whether you like it or not, was the series as a whole is definitely very good, very high standard. Even the last season, I mean, I focused on the negatives because, in a sense, I'm a negatively oriented person when it comes to criticism. But
a pessimist.
as I said, not a pessimist, because, like I said, my assessment was a 5, which I stand by. And everything I said about the battle, the direction, the performances, the effects, the production was top notch. It was true for the whole season. That's what gave it those 5 points from me. The writing, the narrative stuff really let it down. The fact that it was compressed, that I thought there were characterizations which didn't work, all that sort of stuff is what dropped those 5 points. But the remaining 5 points, just the quality of the production was fantastic. But putting that aside, looking over the thing as a whole, as you know, I mean, for me, ever since they ran out of book material, even really once they started running low on book material, the stuff, the way that they did Dawn, from that point on, it was all like downhill. Seasons 1 to 4 for me are like the golden period of not just Game of Thrones, but just television. It's some of the best television that there is. Not perfect. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it is definitely amongst the best. I feel a little bit for the writers in that they had a hard task in finishing it all off. They knew where they needed to be, and they kind of, it's tough to get to somewhere where you need to be there, and you don't have the guide of
someone
well,
doing
I don't
a
want to say
voyage.
I don't. Yeah, basically, exactly. But it's also, how many shows are there with really satisfying endings? I had to think about it afterwards, and I could think of maybe like 2 or 3 shows that I thought nailed the ending, or at least did a very good job of it. It's tough.
Yeah. When I was...
But yeah, so point is, book seasons rule, everything else rules. Fuck you, I'm out.
Yeah, I agree with the book seasons were the best. I think they didn't nail the ending, but it doesn't take away as much from the show on a whole. I think it's still a fantastic show. Ending sucked. I really hope that they didn't hold out on this show. So as far as story-wise for prequels, I don't know what side projects. I don't know what side projects they've got planned, but if they hold out on stuff that could have made this a lot better, I think it's gonna really be detrimental, especially with the Night King and stuff, because I feel like that's what they may be doing, but we'll see.
They are planning one about the children of the forest and everything.
Well then fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them. Yeah, that's rubbish. Nah,
they already started filming it.
Oh well, fuck them definitely. Fuck them twice. It's ridiculous. They have set the standard now for like a great show in television. They really did, and they've also set the standard of how to fuck up an ending. Fuck up the last couple of seasons. So yeah, Adam, Troy, agree with most of their points. I just feel like the standards of the show were, in terms of set and characters and the acting, look, you got to work with what you got, and yeah, the writing just wasn't there, and that was the best parts of the first couple of series. It's just the solid character drama, the political intrigue. It just disappeared, and I don't know. I literally wrote a list here of all the characters that I thought could have they deserved a better ending. And I'm just like, it just kind of makes me a bit depressed reading through it all, just being like, all these characters that we invested so much time in, they stuck the landing, and it's like, oh well, I'm looking forward. I'm going to be positive here. I'm looking forward to the show that's going to come up to Game of Thrones standards and beat it, because it was a good ride while it lasted. Yeah.
Well, as the outlier in the group, I want to say that I can't agree with everything these guys have said. I encourage everyone to go back at some point soon and start watching Game of Thrones from the start. I think that you may be in the same boat as myself. You may think like Adam and go like, wow, these are way better than anything that came later on. But you may be like myself and think, you might see that season 8 actually was really fantastic, and we took season 1 and 2 as being, because it was so long ago, as being these really amazing things. And the opposite, where I actually thought the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones were the best ones. So you may be like me. I'm in the minority. I'm not going to lie. As much as I love all Game of Thrones, but you may end up like me, thinking that way. That's my final thought. Rewatch it and see what you think as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely plan to. Definitely.
Yeah. So I thought a fun question would be, because I listened to, it was the interview with George R. Martin, and they gave him this question. I thought it would be a fun question. So if you had to be in a trial by combat, so you've requested a trial by combat, who would you pick as your champion from the Game of Thrones television show? So it has to be from when season 1 begins. You can't pick someone from like way back in the lore. It has to be someone that we've actually seen in the TV show. And yeah, tell us why you would pick them as your champion to represent you, or you will die. So has everyone picked theirs?
Do they have to be human?
Yes, they can't. They have to be human. We mentioned that as well. My bad. They have to be human. You can't pick the Night King or that ghost thing that killed. The thing that came out of.
Pick a dragon.
No, the one that came
The
out
dragon.
of the red woman's vagina, that big ghost thing that can just kill everyone. You can't pick that.
Well, that was definitely what I had in mind about this.
Yeah,
Right?
damn. You've really
Now that you've ruled out the
derailed that.
vagina ghost.
Yeah. That was so random, but yeah. Andy, do you want to start us off?
All right, well, I'll start off with a serious one. One of my favourite characters from the show is Sir Barristan Selmy, former Kingsguard, joins the Queen's Guard at Daenerys, and sadly is on that list of characters who deserved a better end. But I pick him for being one of the best swordsmen in the land and also having one of the most badass lines in the show. When he is let go of by Cersei, he draws his sword and issues a line, "I could cut through you like carving a cake." And you know what? That sounds fucking cool. I'd vouch for him to fight for me in a trial by combat for sure.
Bit past his prime. I'll be interested to see what everyone else says. So,
Mate,
Troy, do you have
mate.
someone in mind?
I'll probably go for the mountain. Before zombie, after zombie, it doesn't really matter. He's a big
Well,
big
there's a
bastard.
big difference. I'd say you have to go before zombie because after
I'll
when he's a
take
zombie,
before. I mean, when he does
Yeah.
turn into a zombie,
he's like a
he
freak.
is invincible. So,
Jason Voorhees, just like bloody Voorhees or whatever. You could just cop it in the head and be fine.
but he was ridiculous, massive, and even if he's just got a couple of thumbs, he'll do some damage.
Oh, yeah.
Adam?
Well, if there was, I don't think anyone would ever accuse us of planning these podcasts out very well at all. But if anyone had that thought, I'm about to blow it out of the water because my choice was actually also Sir Barristan Selmy.
Yeah.
Oh.
2 for
Because,
2. All right.
I mean,
Still
yeah, he is
first
past
up
his prime. He's past his prime, but he's also still one of the best swordsmen in Westeros, and he's a man of principle. He's a man of honor. So I'm down with that. So he would be my choice.
So
And you would die.
Oh,
so I'm gonna.
it would have been cool.
I'm
to see
gonna go
Barristan
with
just come, that's for sure.
I'm gonna go with Brienne of Tarth, who
Oh,
became Sir Brienne of Tarth, and I've got some really good reasons why.
better be damn good. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Barristan's going to be cutting her anyone.
Well, first of all, her resume, looking back, is pretty bloody good. So she beat the Hound. You got that covered, and I think the Hound could potentially beat the Mountain. You've got she beat Jaime when he had both hands when they were on the bridge. Granted, he was in a cell for more than a year, but she did easily beat him. Like she was like so shocked. She was like, Jaime's meant to be this amazing swordsman. She beat Lawrence Tyrell, the Flower knight, who was meant to be like one of the best swordsmen. She easily beat him as well. I just think, like, from a resume point of view, she's just come up against all these major heavy hitters and she's won every time.
So she's a dark horse of the whole group here. We've got 2 confirmed cutthroat killers and Brienne of Tarth coming in.
Well, Brienne was also on Renly's Kingsguard as well. It's worth.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, Jaime's meant to be like one of the best swordsmen ever, and she just whipped him into shape.
Yeah, but by your own admission, Carl, he has been in a cell for a good couple of months.
Yeah.
Wasting away.
It's about a year, yeah.
Yeah, can't call him in his prime. Definitely the Night of Flowers. That's where she's introduced. It's a good scene.
I think with the Mountain, Troy, I don't know about picking the Mountain because, like, yes, he did. Like, if you were Tyrion, if you were on the other side of the Tyrion trial by combat, you would have won because the Mountain did beat the Viper, but he did get pretty much, like, him in his human form. He did get pretty owned. Like, he wasn't that great. He was kind of just this huge swinger. Like,
I mean, he did literally get killed by Oberyn.
Yeah, true.
He just died after.
Well, eventually.
But I don't think he's that good of a fighter. Like, I think both of our picks would beat the Mountain. Like Mountain's just good at hacking up civilians. That's like his thing.
Yeah, but he's like a terror, but he's also literally like a force of nature. Like you have to think tactically because you're not going to beat him in a fight of strength. Yeah,
That's the thing. It's if it's a trial by combat, you're not really worried about honor or swordsmanship. You just
True.
want to win at all costs.
That's why I was thinking of going with
Bronn?
what's his name, Bronn. Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's like cheap as fuck, and like he does not have any honor. No, he has no honor. He'll just he'll do anything. But are you telling me, guys, if Sir Barristan at the start of season 1 went up against Brienne of Tarth, like in all a 6'4" glory, you think he would beat Brienne of Tarth?
She was lucky she didn't have to verse Sir Barristan Selmy. That's what I'm saying, Carl.
You think he was that good?
Even with your point of defeating the Hound, he'd already been bitten and he had an injury that he was currently going through as well. So, I think we need to look at those certifications a bit more on that resume.
And the other thing as well is that I don't know. Are we allowed to take into account the backstory? Because he's got a pretty fucking badass backstory as well in terms of people that he's beaten.
Like who? Because I don't know.
Let me
hang on. I've got the Wikipedia page open. Let's see. Who has he killed? Let's see.
Back when he was in his prime, which is no more. As Joffrey said, he's old, too old to protect anyone.
Oh,
yeah,
you take him on his word, of course, yeah. So he served in the War of the Nine Painting Kings.
Because I could pick Robert.
He slew its leader, Malus the Monstrous, the last Blackfire Pretender.
Because Robert Baratheon, like, obviously, if you start picking people in their prime, it's a bit different. But I do think, like, Sir Barristan, he was past his prime. I don't think he could handle Brienne. Like, Brienne, every battle Brienne goes up against, she, like, fucking kicks ass the whole entire series.
Well, do you think that there's anyone that she would lose to in a fight?
Well, otherwise I would have picked them as my champion. So no, I think.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what we need, guys?
Potentially Viper, but then I keep saying to myself, if I pick Viper, someone can just use the argument, well, if you were Tyrion, you would have lost the trial by combat. So
but at the same time, the only reason that he lost that was because he was fighting the Mountain. That's literally the only reason.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there wouldn't have been that emotional investment that caused him to just to hold back at the end, because he wanted that confession. If he just like stuck the spear through his heart, then boom, job done.
Definitely.
But he was so good. Like, that was ridiculous. He's like Darth Maul of Game of Thrones.
Damn it, we're trying to not talk about Star Wars this episode.
Reset the counter. Podcast without Star Wars.
But it's thinking, before you reset it, I just wanted to say with Star Wars, a lot of
just to let our listeners know there is not an actual physical counter, but we can make one.
But with the with Star Wars, they always talk about who would win against who in a Jedi like a lightsaber fight, and they always use analogies like, or not analogies, they use examples. For example, they're like, this person beat this person, then they beat this person, so that makes them better, and all these kind of things like that. But what they kind of settle on is that depending on your style of combat, that really matters. So, for example, Darth Maul beat Qui-Gon, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like someone Qui-Gon beat is not as good as, or you get where I'm going with this. Basically, because different styles, different styles when they go up against each other don't work out, and they do better against different people. So, for example, like Viper may beat the Mountain, but then the Mountain might be really good against Brienne. That kind of logic.
So what you're saying, Carl, is that we need Adam to modify a game, because he's already done this once before with good old Pez. He needs to recreate the Game of Thrones characters so we can battle it out and work out who truly would be the number one fighter in Westeros.
That is definitely not going to happen.
Oh, but you can use Soul Calibur. You can do character customizations and that.
I would really like to play that Game of Thrones game again, Adam.
Oh yeah, what did you think, Carl? In the end,
the video game.
That.
I was talking about Adam's board game. Yeah.
Board
So
game.
for the listeners, you played it, Troy. You were there, weren't you?
Very good game.
Yeah.
Board game. Yeah, we mentioned it in the last podcast as well.
Yeah, true. The video game, so I went out and bought Game of Thrones, the game on Xbox 360, which everyone I've talked to didn't even know existed. I came out around the time of season 2, I think, and yeah, I don't like turn-based RPGs, so I started playing Skyrim again, which is pretty much Game of Thrones, the game. So,
well, there we go, Adam. Your game is still the best Game of Thrones games we've played. Oh, yeah. Actually, hey, before I forget, Adam, have you played the Settlers of Catan version of Game of Thrones that we?
I have played it, but not with the Game of Thrones rules.
What?
The extra rules, yeah. I just haven't had the chance to get a group of people together.
Well, Adam, we'll have to feature this in a future podcast and just see if you're more satisfied with the ending of that game than you were with the ending of Game of Thrones.
Oh, great way to end the podcast.
Did we actually? I don't remember last week. Did we talk about the Game of Thrones board game, the official one?
No, tell us about that.
But your one's not official yet, Adam. What are you talking about?
Well, my one is unfinished and probably never will be.
Oh.
And we'll be chucking up the Kickstarter link.
Yeah, look, we'll talk about it another time. Let's put the audience out of their misery. We've been dragging this out long enough.
Well, thanks for joining us on our episode 5 Game of Thrones special. I hope you Game of Thrones fans are really angry at all our opinions, and you're going to let us know in the comments, because that's what it's all about. Like, us nerds just debating these things. Let us know what you think. Overall, I think we all have the same consensus that Game of Thrones was a really great show, whether the ending sucked or not. So anyway, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
Catch you later.
Let us know if you want, and let us know if you want Troy back for another episode.
No,
or you want to replace one of us with Troy.
We'll
find out.
Bad forever. All right.
See ya.
See you later.
Perfect.